Hi, and welcome to the Nerd Podcast with me, Bia. And today's episode will be Brazilian History Part 1 Colombus, Cabral, Caminha, and the Treaty of Tordesillas. Well, back in the end of 15th century, beginning of the 16th, there were two very powerful nations in Europe. The most powerful nations back then, Portugal and Spain. They were both pioneers in the search for new routes to the eastern civilizations like India and others. Well, pretty much the thing that could bring you the most riches was traveling to the east, but pretty much to do that, you'd have to cross the Mediterranean Sea, which was actually very dangerous. People were always fighting over who would control it. Pretty much who controlled the Mediterranean would control the world. But Portugal and Spain, they weren't very happy about it. So they actually started sponsoring people to find alternative routes to India. And that's how pretty much everything happened. Well, they first started trying to go around Africa, but that actually turned out to be very hard. Of course, some people managed to do that. We have Vasco da Gama, who was a Portuguese man who was one of the first to do that. But some trips actually went wrong. And, well, let's talk about it. Well, of course, they were trying to go towards the west before the trips theoretically went wrong. But there was a lot of controversial things about it. For example, people believed that the earth was plane. So they believed that if you went too far west, you would fall in an infinite abyss and then you would die. They also believed that there were monsters in the Western Sea, so they tried to avoid going that way. But then, in 1491 or 90, a guy named Christopher Columbus started planning his trip towards the west. So, you pretty much know how this trip ends. They arrived in Central America in an island that is nowadays known as Salvador. And actually, I think everyone knows about this part. But what I might not know is that Portugal wasn't very far behind them. Actually, they were pretty close. They just weren't the pioneers, but they were actually a very good nation back then. Well, in March 9th of 1500s, a man named Pedro Alvares Cabral left Portugal and sailed towards the west. So Columbus had returned already, and they knew that there were some new stuff in there. But I'll talk more about this later. He sails toward the west, trying to find another route towards India, and he actually finds a new land. He left Portugal in March 9th of the 1500, and after 44 days of travel, the first signs of land were seen by his crew. On the day, April 22nd, he landed on the city that we nowadays call Porto Segure, in the state that we nowadays call Bahia. But of course, back then, it wasn't called like that. Actually, he believed that he had landed in an island. So he actually did not believe that it would turn out to be such an extensive uh, land, right? As Brazil is today, the fifth largest country in the world. He actually believed that he had reached India. So he called the natives Indians, and that's how we actually call them nowadays. Well, once they arrived, they started exchanging gifts and started making contact with the natives. And well, while they were doing that, and also praying and building churches, a man named Pedro Vaz de Caminha was given a very important task to write a letter addressed to the King of Portugal. What would the letter be about? He had to describe how was this land they arrived in. He described the fauna, he described the flora, the natives, everything. And it became a very important letter because it shows how the Portuguese saw this new thing they were discovering. The first letter from Brazil addressed Portugal. Well, as I mentioned before, Columbus had arrived in America before Portugal. So, who would the land belong to? Well, as I said before, they actually suspected that there were more stuff further west. So, Portugal and Spain, they knew that they were basically the biggest empires back then. So, they started negotiating. And that's how the Treaty of Tordesillas was created. It basically said, oh, all this new land that was discovered or is going to be discovered will follow this pattern so we can know whose land is. Basically, they got Cape Verde and they said, oh, all the land within 370 leagues from this island is going to belong to Portugal, and everything after that will belong to Spain. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I will be showing you how this treaty would look like, and you can see it's a significantly smaller portion to Portugal than it is for Spain, and it's actually a significantly smaller portion of land than Brazil occupies today. So, as you can imagine, while the years went by, Brazil went growing. But that's something I'll talk more later in later episodes. So, yes, that's everything I have to say for today. Please stay tuned. Next episode, we'll talk about slavery, abandonment, and a very flawed administrative system. Um, that's pretty much it. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe and share with your friends, family, or whatever. If you're watching this on SoundCloud, I don't really know how SoundCloud works, but I don't know. Like it, I don't know, and share it. And I also have a Patreon, I'll be linking down if you can check it out, please. I don't actually want to stay talking only about history or Brazilian history. I would love to talk about European history, well, other things beside history. I'm a huge cinema lover. I love music, so I love pretty much everything. You can send me themes to talk about, and I'll gladly do so. And this is everything for now. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.